Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special episode of the Hub World podcast. Today is April 29th as we record, which is our very own member of the Hub World's birthday, Matteo's birthday. Happy birthday, Matteo.
Wow, happy birthday.
Thank you.
So we thought to, as our icebreaker for today's podcast, Riley and I delivered Matteo a gift earlier today, and we thought to share in the fun, we would watch him open it over Discord as per pandemic protocols. So we thought that will be our icebreakers. We will have the live reaction to his gift. He will tell us what it is as he opens it, as well as any of you watching from YouTube. You'll be able to see the live footage. And then following that, Riley will be leaving.
I got Halos to play.
He's got stuff to do. He's got the things to do, but he's here for this portion. And we get to the main topic. Riley will be leaving, and we'll go from there. But anyway,
I'm here
begin.
also. I'm the cameraman.
That's
Gino is the cameraman.
We'll reintroduce ourselves as we get to the topic. But,
so, just before we start, as you can see, this is one of my 4 Banjo amiibos. The other 3, I have 2 sealed ones and another one that is yet to be opened. But I guess I have 3 sealed ones, but soon to be 2. Banjo will be
That's
here.
not enough,
Banjo is always with me. So, I'll be opening the box. There's 2 things. I guess I do this thing first. Yeah. A lot of paper. Holy shit! Complete in box. I assume complete in box. Copy of Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge. Holy crap!
There you go.
Where you guys get?
From
we have
the
our ways.
eBays.
Oh, nice! I'm so happy. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Oh, that's really cool. Anything you like to say about Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's
Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge. If anyone hasn't played it, it is a really, really solid isometric platformer for Game Boy Advance. It's not the best game, but it's certainly not the worst. I highly recommend. So I'll just leave it there beside Banjo. I guess I'll maybe show a picture of the Banjo Shrine
Maybe
after this as well.
Matteo is the household banjo king.
VHS tape, the E3 VHS tape. Yeah, yeah, nice.
This exists? What?
Yeah, Jesus Christ! I think this was given out through Nintendo Power.
It was given out.
Oh my God.
Let's get
This
a
is
nice
sick.
close up here.
I gotta set up the VHS player to watch it. Oh my God! Look at Mumbo's face.
There's a meme in there somewhere.
This is amazing. Holy
June 29th.
Yep, that's Banjo's birthday. Banjo will be 22 this year.
What is the thing on?
Wait, no, 23 this year.
Wow, Matteo, do math.
Yeah. Zoom into the
I'm
text.
holding it. I'm holding.
Innocent waif is kidnapped. An evil witch consumed by envy plots her bitter revenge. And 2 heroes answer to the call.
Innocent
to
waif.
So it's like Grunty's
kidnapped?
face
Yeah.
used with the Bubble Gloop Swamp.
Yep. This is amazing. Holy smokes. I did not expect this.
I didn't even know this.
How fitting was it that I brought Banjo out? I was
I
expecting
know.
like something Nightwing related because you said, it'd be topical to our discussion. But
yeah, I tried to throw you off.
yeah, holy smokes. I cannot believe this right now. I'm legitimately in shock.
Dang.
The
So,
VHS was like, I didn't even know it existed, and when I saw it,
Yeah.
I was like, this is something Matteo is gonna like, just be like, what the
Alright, let's go
hell?
over to
Okay,
this.
so now you're now viewing my hand.
Turn the lights on.
Yeah, the light's over here, Gino. So we will be now taking a picture of the Banjo Shrine here.
We gotta put everything in the shrine.
Well, it's going to be, as everyone can see here, move it up, Gino. It's going to be very difficult. That's the DCEU Funko Shrine, but move up. gonna be very difficult to fit things here. So I think Banjo Amiibo might have to go up here, next to Conquer.
Oh, there's another Banjo Amiibo sealed.
Yep. But anyways, it's gonna be very difficult to fit stuff in here. So I think I'm gonna do that off camera.
Okay, here's the slow pan. You want to briefly discuss all of the things in the Banjo Shrine?
Okay. So I have, first of all, the Banjo Kazooie and Banjo Tooie autographed by Grant Kirkhope from, I think that was PAX 2015 we went.
Yeah, that was.
I have the Banjo issue of Nintendo Power. I have the official Banjo strategy guide. Not for resale copy of Nuts and Bolts. I have the Banjo license plate, which was from Loot Gaming. This is a sealed Banjo Kazooie soundtrack from Fangamer. I have complete in box copy of Banjo Kazooie and Tooie, Banjo Totaku, bunch of various other pins and keychains from Fangamer, the Diddy Kong Racing.
What is this one right over here?
This was my childhood Banjo Kazooie toy from the Diddy Kong Racing set, and this is the sealed in box Banjo figure from Diddy Kong Racing that Jules, Gino, and Riley got me last year for my birthday.
I can sense a theme.
I got a Banjo coin from the Rare store, and this is the Banjo character.
A rare patch?
Yes.
From the art?
So then if you move up, I have sealed Banjo Totaku, another Banjo Amiibo, sealed Conquer, and a bunch of plushes up here. No, it's gonna break. No. Anyways, and then the last, I have Banjo Pilot and Grunty's Revenge there.
And here's our actual copy of
Grunty's Revenge.
Grunty's Revenge.
But anyways, this is the most important thing. It's the light. This tea light here, I turn it on when there is going to be a Nintendo Direct or Microsoft announcement to give hope, put hope in the universe that there is a new Banjo game coming out. So
It
that is the
manifested Banjo and Smash, so
Yes, it did. It has magic powers.
Only took like 10 years for it to work, but it worked.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. See, now I want a whole segment where we have different days where we show off our different gaming collections. Yeah, so I think what we'll do here is we'll give Matteo and Gino some time to just recollect themselves after opening the gifts. We'll give Riley some time to go play his Halo, and I will give us some transitionary. All good.
I just want to say happy birthday again to Matteo.
Holy
birthday.
shit, guys!
And we will add. I'm going to add some transitionary music in here for all you viewers, some banjo music to just play us out into the main topic. So take a moment. We will be right back. Okay, so we are back after that short intermission. So just to remind you who's here, I am Jules from the Hub World.
I am Matteo from the Hub World.
And I'm Gino.
And our main topic for today is something that's like, it's news, but it's not really mainstream news. We haven't seen a lot of people reporting on this, although we've seen the articles. And at this point, we are treating this as very much not fact. Very much like this is very well a baseless rumor, could come to fruition because the leaker in question has an okay track record. But overall, we thought it would be fun to speculate. But essentially yesterday, so actually it was actually 2 days ago, April 27th, an article was posted in which a leaker by the name of Daniel Rickman claimed that there is currently a Marvel fighting game in development at NetherRealm Studios for next-gen consoles. So for those of you who don't recognize NetherRealm as a name, NetherRealm is the developer of Mortal Kombat. They are also the developers of Injustice, which is the DC fighting game. So the fact that they would be working on a Marvel game is a fairly big deal. If that were the case, it got us thinking about.
Well, especially because they're owned by Warner Bros. As well, right? The studio is owned by Warner Bros. And Warner Bros. And Disney, and then by extension Marvel and DC are big rivals. So
Not only are they
that's
comic book rivals, they're now like publishing entity rivals.
media rivals. But
Yeah,
anyways,
so it would be very interesting. And I wonder what the like politics around like WB as like a gaming division versus WB as like a film division. Like I wonder if that's part of why they'd be open to collaborating, or I don't know. But either way, it got us thinking about
Yeah.
what
Well, sorry to interrupt here, but WB
No,
has made Marvel games in the past. Like Warner Bros. Has the licenses for the Lego franchise for video games, and Lego Marvel Superheroes was a thing. They had like 3 or 4 different games, and they were absurdly fun. And
Mhm.
like even the Lego games themselves have like hinted, like for instance, the Lego DC games hinted at the Avengers and
Jurassic
stuff coming up
Jurassic Park.
when yeah. If we could get a pic, Matteo, if you could find a picture of that, that'd be really cool, and we can just put it here just to,
I don't
I guess,
think the
show.
DC ones. I don't think the DC ones hinted towards the Marvel ones.
Or,
But
or was it the other way around?
no, I think DC hinted Jurassic Park, and I
No, I
think
remember at the end of one of the DC, I think it was like Lego Batman 2 or Lego Batman 1, where like you saw like a character hanging from the traditional like Spider-Man web bricks
oh yeah
upside
yeah yeah yeah
down,
yeah.
and it just
Okay.
turned
Oh
out
yeah,
it ended up being Nightwing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh,
that's an Easter egg more so than uh than anything else, and like that's something that they could have done regardless of whether they're working on a Marvel game. But I see what you mean, and there's definitely so there has been some
yeah,
collaboration there. So, but it
yeah,
got us thinking about not only what this Marvel fighting game could look like, but also about the future of Injustice. Um, because like in our previous podcast, we talked about what a third Injustice could look like. I'm sure a lot of people thought a third Injustice was coming sometime soon, considering Mortal Kombat 11 received its major expansion last year. It's very clearly like done, and that means NetherRealm's next project would be um, probably coming relatively soon. And I'm sure for many the assumption was that it was the third Injustice game, but the news of this potential Marvel game really shakes that up.
Well,
Um,
in the article it says that the this potential Marvel fighting game will only be available on current like next generation consoles, so PS5 and Series X. But I don't think even like I feel like that makes it sound like it's further away than it actually is. Because like even if the game were to come out like the end of this year or next year, um, I don't think they would be ready to leave the Xbox One and PS4 audience behind
well,
because
here's
a
the
lot
thing.
of people don't have the next gen hardware yet. But also there could be the possibility that they do have Injustice 3 in development now, and this is the project after the potential Injustice 3. Just say like
yeah.
True.
Injustice 3 comes out this year, this Marvel game probably takes at least 2 years, 2.5 years to develop. So, and by then, to me, that makes sense for them to leave the
Yeah.
last gen consoles behind. But I feel like the timing's a bit off here.
Yeah.
But
I
at the
still want
same
them to do
time,
a crossover. That would be really fun.
yeah, but at the same time, so we'll get to that for sure, Gino. But I
Yeah.
like to go with like the dates. The other thing to consider though is sure it does seem like if that game like if Injustice 3 or whatever comes out this year or even next year that it might be too soon to drop the previous consoles, but at the same time one of the very like last generation for Xbox One and PS4, one of the first games that was hardcore exclusive, like will is not releasing on PS3, Xbox 360, was Batman Arkham Knight. WB in the past has been like we're dropping past gen, very early in the generation, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's something that would happen with Injustice if it were to launch, maybe not this year, but next year.
Yeah, and dropping the previous generation really isn't an issue if you're a Microsoft customer. Like if this game is also going to be going like the Game Pass route, also like if you have a PC or if you have that Game Pass subscription or whatever, it's probably coming to you, right? Like so you don't have to
Well, that's
worry about.
assuming it's on Game Pass.
Well, a lot of other like
That's
major
a big
releases-
assumption,
Yeah, no.
right? Like I'm sure at some point, but that's us. Sure, I see what you mean, but also remember, not every Xbox player has a PC.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, but the other, like, I just think it's possible, but I also don't think that if Injustice 3 exists right now, like if Injustice 3 is coming before this Marvel game, I really don't think it's a 2021 game, because DC announced 2 games last year at DC Fandom, and neither of them is coming out this year. And so it wouldn't make sense that they would, if Injustice 2 or Injustice 3 was coming out this soon, it wouldn't make sense that they didn't announce it last year. In fact, if it's going to get announced, it'll probably get announced at the very recently announced DC Fandom this October. And if a
Or
game's
at
being announced in
E3.
October,
Or at
could be
E3.
announced at E3. That is true. But even at E3,
Because I think Injustice
be
2 was announced and released within a year. Like Injustice 2, I think was announced at an E3,
with
and then it came out the following like March or something like that. So it was in
the
like 10
following
months
May,
it
I
came
believe.
out.
Yeah, yes. So, but that's what I mean is like, even if it got announced at E3, it's probably still at least a year away. And by the time like we're at March 2022, I think the market will definitely start to leave behind past gen.
Well, assuming that the whole chip crisis and stuff is all sorted out by then, right?
I think
Because
they're
it's still
expecting
really difficult to
shortages.
find.
Yeah, I still think they're expecting shortages to last this year, like the whole year or the remainder of the year. But
Yep.
I don't know. I just feel I don't know. Like I'm taking this with a huge grain of salt because like I still don't think like I just can't see because if Marvel is getting a fighting game made by NetherRealm, I can't see the game getting the full treatment like Injustice got, where like Injustice had a prequel comic, it had like like but because like this is the thing I'm thinking about. It's like why would Warner Bros or or DC or whatever get their biggest rival, like why would they give them this the golden goose basically, like because the Injustice comic was made by DC, published to I think it started maybe a little bit before, but like that book went on for like 2 years. It wasn't
Well,
just like to coincide with the game. That book had legs, and then it got a sequel series when Injustice 2 came out. So like would Marvel let DC write the book because like NetherRealm is owned by Warner Bros. So I just feel like there's a lot of like gray
DC ain't
area.
writing the book. Marvel's, if there's going to be a book, Marvel will
But
write it.
but then why would they let them publish a book that has to do with their like is Warner Bros is making money off this game if it exists in the state that's in, right? Like they're gonna make money off this game. But I just don't I'm having I'm having a lot of trouble here. Like it's just and then the other thing is
Well, what I think you need to look
they
at
must
it is,
they would have to be like they have to be getting paid handsomely for this. Like it just that's the only way.
well,
And we know
but
Disney's got the money.
put yourself in this position. Put yourself in the position of Warner Bros. Okay, okay. Marvel and Disney decide it's time we make a Marvel fighting game, because we haven't had a dedicated Marvel fighter in a long, long, long time. So they go to NetherRealm and to Warner Bros. And they say, we want you to make it because we're very impressed by what you did with Injustice. Now, here's the kicker. It doesn't matter who the hell makes this Marvel fighting game, whether it's NetherRealm or the next person that Disney asks. This game is going to be a hit because Marvel characters are hot right now. So why wouldn't WB look at that and be like, yeah, this is our competitor, but at least we can make money off of what they're doing? Like, they've come to us to make their game. Regardless of who makes this game, it's going to sell and it's going to do well. So at least we might as well just make money off of it.
And well, then the other worry is we know that the game's going to sell and be a hit. And
What happens to a
It's-
sequel?
well, this is what I'm going to get at. Like, there's no way if a game, just that game sells tens of millions of copies and is critically acclaimed, won't get a sequel. That means NetherRealm has to make another game. That means and we know Mortal Kombat gets prioritized over Injustice because Mortal Kombat is NetherRealm's flagship series. So, given the choice, like, they're gonna obviously alternate between Mortal Kombat and then another game. So after this game comes out, the next Mortal Kombat's going to come out. And then what are we going to do after Mortal Kombat 12 comes out? Are you going to make
But see,
Injustice 3, or are you going to make the sequel to your smash hit Marvel fighting game that's probably going to sell more than Mortal Kombat anyways? So like it's just it might push Injustice to the back burner, and DC fans do not want that. As I know, and it's going to make way more money than Injustice will if it exists, this hypothetical Marvel fighting game, but that's the slippery slope. I feel like if they do Marvel, if they incorporate Marvel, it has to also include DC to some, like, they have to have both franchises in the fighting game. It's got to be a Marvel versus DC or fighting game.
Or like an amalgam fighting game. Huh?
but here's the
There's a
thing.
throwback.
But I don't necessarily think that's true because I think, and this is just coming from my perspective, I don't think the cycle needs to be Mortal Kombat something else, Mortal Kombat something else, because we're also reaching this point in the gaming kind of like culture where if you release two of the same, like especially when it comes to fighting games, if you release two Mortal Kombat games on the same generation of consoles, typically most casuals aren't going to buy both. And it actually hurts it. It's almost better to have like one per. You know, like Street Fighter did Street Fighter 5 and they just supported it throughout the PS5 generation. And now Street Fighter 6 will hit this generation. Right? So they might want to do that, right? They might want to just right now they drop Injustice 3 and they drop a Marvel game and then Mortal Kombat 12 comes out. And then that's the only Mortal Kombat for this generation, right? And then that's it. And it just becomes this cycle. And then the other thing that's nice too is if they do what they've done with Injustice, which is build the Marvel game off of a similar system as they've built Mortal Kombat and Injustice off of, that does pave the way in the future for those crossovers where, yeah, you throw in a Marvel character into Mortal Kombat, and maybe in the next Injustice, there's Marvel guest characters or whatever, right? Or like even a full-on collaboration at some point, because they do build the games to have a similar enough system where they can bounce characters around. So maybe this is like a starting point to build to a collaboration.
Maybe. I just really want Injustice's story, because I feel like they could definitely do one more game, because 2 ended on a cliffhanger. I feel like they could do another game, like do Injustice 3, finish off the Injustice series, and then start something new. I just want them to, just because if they do something else, they might get distracted and might not make Injustice 3. Just finish that and then
I'm sure
move on to the next
but that's
thing.
the thing. Injustice 2 sold really well. I'm sure there's going to be another one.
Yeah, like there's I
like
or for instance, okay, like so you're saying that they may as well just go for like the games as a service model. My worry with games as a service is, like, for instance, we get all these elaborate roadmaps and we got all these
not games as service.
Well,
That's
you
not
have
what
the
we're
one
talking
game
about.
and then you just continue it, right? Like that's
No,
what
that's
I.
not games of service. That's games of service is something very different. Games of service is as an economy. What I'm talking about is the way that fighting games have been functioning since basically like the beginning of the PS4, Xbox One era, which is like
Kind of
Street
like
Fighter
Killer.
5 or like Killer Instinct, like started with a base roster, and instead of ever releasing a sequel, it was just every year they released like 8 more characters. Like even with what Smash Ultimate's doing now, right? Instead of doing another Smash, they're just gonna make the game and just keep adding characters to it basically till the end of the generation. Like rather than dropping support from it for a couple like after a year so that they can make a sequel, they just make one version of it for that generation and they just continually add to it. So it's not really a game that's as a service, it's more just like a game that is being supported well beyond when it should be.
Yeah. So kind of like I guess also what like Destiny is kind of doing as well, right? Like, okay, here's the one game. They're not making a third. It's gonna just keep going. Okay, I
Yeah.
misunderstood what you were saying there earlier.
Yeah. And I think like the other thing to consider too is like we're saying like, well, Disney probably went to NetherRealm, but what if it was the opposite? What if NetherRealm and Warner Bros? What if NetherRealm's been throwing around that idea from the beginning of like, because we've been talking about it for a long time too, about like,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be cool if there was ever a Marvel versus DC? And maybe NetherRealm said to like Disney and Marvel, they're like, hey, we want to do a DC versus Marvel game in the style of Injustice, and Disney's stipulation was that's fine, but you got to make a full-on Marvel one first, and then you can clash them. Like we don't want there to be another like we want a Marvel fighting game before there's a Marvel versus fighting game again, because they haven't had their own fighter for a while. So maybe it was a deal like that where they're like, we'll give you the collaboration down the road, but make one that's just us for now.
Yeah. Or like maybe they just go the Ninja Turtles route and just be like, oh, okay, here's the base Injustice 3, and then this Marvel collab thing is actually like, okay, this year 1 or this year 2 expansion to the game
I would
for like
laugh
support
if
down the line.
I would laugh if all of the DLC characters of Injustice 3 were Marvel characters.
Not
That'd
be
honestly
happy.
be cool though.
I would not be happy about that because we need at least 2 Mortal Kombat characters.
Listen,
At least 2.
I will not stop until all of the Robins are playable in until all the Robins and all of the Batman villains are playable in Injustice.
Yep.
I want them all. I want Penguin, I want Riddler, I want Calendar Man, I
Condiment
want Stephanie
King,
Brown.
Polka Dot Man, Killer
What about
Moth.
Killer Moth? Yeah, I was gonna say Killer
Yeah,
Moth.
Killer Moth.
Mad Hatter.
Egghead. Can't forget about Egghead.
Egghead is not from the comics. He's from Batman 66.
I know.
I
You
want
need
Fish
Egghead.
Mooney.
No, I think that's where we stop here.
No Fish Mooney.
Fish Mooney could just be a premium skin for Superman.
Oh yeah,
Yep, because they're the
I
same
can see
character.
I can see the comparisons.
Oh god,
Similarities.
that Gotham show was bad.
Oh,
Sorry,
God.
sorry, Joe.
Sorry, Joe, if you listen.
Maybe that should be our new thing where we just talk about Gotham.
No.
No.
Anyway, so why don't we just kind of like we've kind of exhausted
Yeah.
this like initial conversation. Why don't we move to one more contained? So,
Yeah.
so we're gonna assume first before we get into assuming that it's a full-on Marvel game. We're gonna assume that the reports might have some like they might have got
Wait.
mixed up, and it actually is Injustice 3 and it is just a Marvel vs DC game. So what would a roster in a Marvel vs DC game look like? How many characters do we think would be on the base? Who would those characters be? What's the ratio from heroes to villains? Let's just get going. What do we think?
Wild speculation
So-
time.
The Injustice 2 base roster was 28 characters. So, and I think they'll probably have the base roster will be bigger. It might not be as big as like the base roster of Injustice, the roster of Injustice 2 was that it had at the end after the DLC, but well, we talked about this a little earlier, Jules. I think 36 base is probably a good starting point, because at least on the DC side they would have something to build off of. They have pre-existing move sets. So
Yeah.
a lot of the dev time is going to be put into building the Marvel characters, and then maybe rebalancing and maybe like adding a few new moves for the returning DC characters, at least. Because I think on my list, actually on my list, every DC character I have here is returning from either Injustice 1 or 2. But yeah. So I think 36 is probably good. 18 Marvel, 18 DC, obviously. It's got to be split down the middle. And then
Yeah.
I feel like the both rosters will probably be very hero oriented. Like probably like at least 2-1. Like 2 heroes to one per one villain on both sides. So I don't know. What about you, Gino? What do you think?
I honestly think it would be smaller because like if you're gonna get the Marvel license and stuff from Disney, and like it's gonna be inherently expensive. I think we might get maybe like in the high 20s. No, I wouldn't say 36. I'd say
No,
in the
what do
high
you
20s.
think? What do you think ratio wise for like a high
Oh,
20s?
I still think it's going to be a select few of the Marvel characters, and then maybe more through DLC later on. Like for instance, like I think, for instance, okay, you have the Injustice storyline going on, and then the Avengers bleed in. Like it's going to
Oh,
be
so
like
you think it's still gonna primarily? It would never be a full-on Marvel vs. DC. You think it would be like
yeah,
DC
like kind of like
featuring Marvel?
yeah, kind of like how like the Ninja Turtles made their way in, right? Like okay, all of them were one character, but like you have a small group of characters like either invade or like just discover this Injustice universe, right? Like they might be out on a mission and something happens, or like oh, and then a DLC package could come out later on. It's the Fantastic Four or the X-Men, like, and just drip feed us the Marvel characters instead of just drop. Okay, here's all the base,
Well,
like
if
here's
that's like
your team, right?
I
Like I think it might
uh,
just be like okay, it's heavily skewed to the DC side of things. 10 Marvel characters. You have the Avengers and a handful of villains.
well, the other thing I forgot to mention, by the way, is that if they do a Marvel vs. DC game, I don't want that game to have anything to do with Injustice, because Injustice is its own thing. It's got its own baggage. Like Injustice 2's roster was picked because like a lot of characters that you would think would be in this Marvel vs. DC game on the DC side can't exist if it's the Injustice universe, because a lot of them have died. So like spoilers, like I have Nightwing on my roster. Nightwing can't be in a Marvel vs. DC game if it's an Injustice, because Nightwing died in Injustice. So like that's I would want it to be something like at least on the DC side, the characters have to be from another, like it's got to be brand new. Like the story's got to be completely unique and created just for this game. I don't want Injustice to have anything to do with it.
Um, and see, I personally like I agree with Matteo that I don't think I would want Injustice to be part of it. I also don't know how I would feel about it just being a guest situation, because I feel like I don't know, like I maybe just the way I'm thinking is like I don't know if Disney or Marvel would be like, yeah, you could just have a few. I feel like it's more like an all or nothing thing. Like it either has to be like a full on like this is the universe, and even from a marketing standpoint, right? Like I feel like even sales wise, they'd like from both companies, like having Marvel versus DC is something people want to see, and it would be something easy to market. Um,
Yeah,
but
like the
as for
marketability of that would be amazing. But like I'm talking about like at the end of the day, these are companies, right? They're not going to be like, oh yeah, you can have my cash cow of a franchise for nothing, and you can have 50 characters.
Yeah, but like
No,
if they're gonna, but Gino, if they're gonna allow the name to be called, just say Marvel vs. DC, whatever, they're not gonna cheap out on giving them the characters. Like they're gonna give them, like they've made the deal. They're gonna, because DC Warner Bros is not gonna be paying Marvel to make this game. It's gonna be the other way around. Like Disney's gonna be paying or Marvel's going to be paying Warner Bros. to get them to make this game. I think, like, cause
Most likely.
yeah, like Warner Bros. Has all the bargaining power in this if this is real. So
Yeah.
they're
And I
not just gonna
think
say, yeah,
too,
you can
like,
only have 5 Avengers characters. Like they're gonna give them the entire Marvel universe to pick from, just so this game can sell as many copies as it possibly can.
and I think the other thing you have to consider is like, you're right, like you're talking like cash cow, but here's the thing: Marvel and DC have collaborated before.
Yeah.
They have. They've collaborated in their comics, which I know, like the comics are a different medium. But even like when you're looking at video games aren't where Marvel makes their money. They make their money off the movies. So yeah, if you're trying to sell me like
Just the movies.
a Batman versus Spider-Man movie, yeah, probably not going to happen. But especially Marvel's just starting to dip into the gaming market. Like DC has a much larger presence than Marvel does, and Marvel's just starting to dip. So if Marvel's looking to make a fighting game, what options do they have? If they're looking at like well-renowned, like well-made fighting game companies, so they can either go
There's
back
only
to
like
Capcom,
3, really.
but that's what I mean is they can either go back to Capcom, who they've been working with, and Capcom's going to try to push them to do Capcom versus like Marvel vs.
Marvel
Capcom
vs.
again.
Capcom.
And the last one was so bad that I feel like Marvel's just going to be like, no, we don't want that anymore. And then and they probably want to differentiate it, right?
Yeah.
And then who else can you go to? You can't go to like Killer Instinct devs because they're tied to Microsoft. You
Well,
can't.
there's Arc System Works. Arc System
Which
Works
does.
would be. They did Dragon Ball Fighter Z. They like
Yes.
they honestly, I think could. They probably.
They
I
could.
would rather them do it because I don't want NetherRealm
They
tied up,
probably do
obviously,
too.
but like their art style so distinct with all their fighting
Yeah.
games. So
Can you imagine like a comic book looking? Yeah. It'd
yeah,
be cool. And then like, but that's what I mean is like, I do think this is ultimately, regardless if this is real, at some point, if it's not initially, it is building to a Marvel versus DC fighting game, because in terms of aesthetic, it would be strange to me that Marvel would want NetherRealm to do it, because NetherRealm's a little bit more edgy, and Marvel typically portrays their characters as a little bit lighter in tone. But anyway, I'm deviating. For me, I think that I, I, I kind of agree with Matteo. Like I think 36 is a good number, but I also acknowledge that that's very idealistic. Um, what I had thought was like 10 or 11 heroes from each side, so that you can cover the like core heroes. Because when I was looking at Marvel and I'm thinking the core heroes, there's about 12 like that you have to have there. But then when Gino was like, "Well, I think like you're probably getting high 20s max," I was like, you know what? He's not wrong. And now that I think about it, if they were to do Marvel vs. DC, I could see them just not doing villains. It all being heroes and having 2 villains, one from each side, who are the main villains of the game. But the whole like idea of the story is that like whatever, Darkseid and Thanos team up and they pit
Thanos.
the heroes of their universes against each other, and then all the characters that are playable are the heroes. Although I'm sure you would still get Loki, or sorry, not Loki. I don't know why
Harley
Loki popped up.
Quinn.
That's what I meant. I'm sure you'd still get Joker, probably, but Harley Quinn they can spin as like a quote unquote hero.
Yeah, they do that, and I don't like that, but
Yeah, but I'm sure that they'd have to put Joker in, and then they'd put like one from Marvel's side, like whatever, Magneto or Doctor Doom, probably. So if you had like, for example, if it was like all heroes except for Thanos, Darkseid, Doctor Doom, and Joker, and that's it, then it could be like 28-ish, right?
but once again, like I think like at least I really think your contenders to be like on the DC side, all of them are going to be returning characters that have had move sets made from Injustice 1 or Injustice 2. So you're really only making like 12 to 18 or 12 to 20 new move sets from the Marvel side, which I think is
That's
less
assuming
equal or
you
less than the Injustice Injustice 1 base roster.
But that's
So-
also assuming that they use the Injustice system completely, because they might have to revamp those movesets if this game weren't to use the Injustice fighting system.
Think
I think
about
it would
it.
use
Why,
the
if
fighting
you
system
don't
would
use,
be very similar, because in fighting systems in the NetherRealm fighting games recently have been pretty like they built Mortal Kombat off of Injustice 2, like Mortal Kombat 11 off of Injustice 2, which was built off of Mortal Kombat 11, which was or Mortal
But there
Kombat
was
10, which
still
was
work
built
to
off.
do.
There was
Like,
work
even
to
when
do,
they-
but like it's not they're not building from scratch on the DC side.
Of course. But they're also not necessarily building from scratch on the Marvel side, because, for example, if they were to exclude Green Arrow but throw Hawkeye in, like, you can base stuff, like, you can take stuff there, right? Like, same with, like, hey, Hulk, you can take his moveset from Bane, right? Like, a
Solomon
lot of his
Grundy.
thing, like, there can, or Solomon Grunt, like, there are definitely, there's definitely characters that they can pull from to, like, fit characters on either side.
Yeah. And you can actually relive the Marvel history of copying DC characters.
Yes. I was about to say that, Gino.
Anyway, I think if we're talking about the who of the roster, I think Marvel has way more like non-negotiables than DC does. So I think like Marvel has like a solid like 12 heroes that are like there's no negotiating. This is the 12. Whereas I feel like DC you have
Has like 10, 9 or 10.
8 and or 9, like 8 or 9, and like like 3 could be negotiable. But like for me, my what I would argue for Marvel, and these are the heroes. I think like these are the 12 heroes. That's it. There's no negotiating at all. Captain America, Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, the core Avengers are there. You're gonna get Hawkeye and you're gonna get Black Widow because both of them are prominent now. They're not going to exclude Black Widow because she's one of their bigger female characters that's on their screen now. So you got those two. You're going to get Spider-Man. You're going to get Captain Marvel. You're going to get Doctor Strange. You're going to get Black Panther. And then most likely you're going to get Wolverine. And you're going to get Deadpool.
Yep.
Like, I don't really think there's other, like, sure, Scarlet Witch would be great. But like, who are they going to exclude? Who are they going to kick out for Scarlet Witch? Black Panther?
Yeah.
Nope. They ain't kicking out Black Panther. They
The
ain't
only
kicking out Doctor Strange.
The only character, like my list is basically the same as yours, but the only one I think, the one that has the least chance of coming out of those or being in the game out of the 12 is Hawkeye, just because
Hawkeye, yeah.
Green Arrow is way more important to DC than Hawkeye is to Marvel.
I would
And
argue I disagree with you actually.
And Green Arrow, like what like Gino said, like the ripoff character, Hawkeye is a total Green Arrow ripoff, because like
Okay,
he's
well,
the
Green
trick
Arrow's
archer.
a Robin Hood ripoff,
Yes,
so
I know, but the thing is,
At least there was like what,
but the
1,200
marketing.
years.
But imagine the marketing though. Like that's the thing though. Like I think Green Arrow should be in this game, but if Hawkeye's in the game, like I don't know. The rosters should not have two archers, but imagine if there were two archers in the game, you could market like all the marketing material. You can have like a just imagine a poster of all the DC heroes on one side and all the Marvel heroes on the other, and like all
Who
the
would
characters
win?
could be fighting off against each other, and Green Arrow would be the match for Hawkeye. So, like, it makes sense from a marketing standpoint for them to be both, but to have both in there. But from a moveset standpoint, include Green Arrow, so then you can take Hawkeye out and have a bigger Marvel character in, or vice versa. So, like,
I guess so. But
the only
like,
wiggle room is like I think on Marvel is Hawkeye. Like I don't think anyone else
I agree.
has a
But
chance of being kicked out.
But I also would like to argue that Hawkeye is more out now, not historically, but now Hawkeye is more important and more relevant to Marvel than Green Arrow is relevant or important to DC right now.
Like
Matteo, I do have to give it to Jules here for a second because DC did recently kind of. I'm gonna dig into to the Arrow show here. I personally do not like what seasons I say 4 onward did with that show. So in my opinion, the character of Green Arrow has been tarnished. And like for the longest
but
time, like whenever I
Green
heard of
Arrow
Hawkeye, I'm
has
like, oh,
though
that's just
like
purple Green Arrow. Now I actually know who Hawkeye is.
yeah, but
And
Green Arrow has 80 years of publication history, right? Hawkeye's and he's Green Arrow's been popular almost all of those 80 years, whereas Hawkeye literally only became popular because of, like, he was a joke. Even in Avengers, the movie, he was a joke. But he's
But you
become
also have to
popular
step
since then.
back.
But his height, Hawkeye's highs are probably higher than Green Arrow's highs just in this last like 8 years. But yeah, I mean, probably it's just I don't know.
But
I
I
just
do
have a
think you also
problem with I don't know.
like I do think you should also recognize though, like as a really big DC fan, you're probably also overestimating how relevant and important Green Arrow was, because before Arrow, Green Arrow was not very big.
But he was
he
still
was
in
very
DC's like top 10 heroes. Like
yeah, like
he
as
was always in that.
yeah, he was
But
always
maybe
in like
Hawkeye's
the
not
Just
in
he was
Marvel's top
he
10.
was in the Justice
but
League
that's the
show.
thing. But actually, but the Hawkeye was like Hawkeye historically was actually very relevant because he's always been a core member of the Avengers and he's always been showing up in their games. And like, yeah, he was about the same level as Green Arrow. Like most people weren't going to know who he was, but he showed up a lot. Like if it was the same way as with Green Arrow, you only knew before Arrow, you only knew Green Arrow if you actually like immersed yourself in DC stuff. If you did, you probably knew who Green Arrow was because he was that character who wasn't popular on his own, but he showed up in a lot of stuff. And that was the same with Hawkeye on Marvel's side. He didn't really have a lot of appeal on his own, but he showed up in a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I can see that.
Whereas now, like Hawkeye to Marvel, because of the movies, has become way bigger and way more important and relevant than Green Arrow is on DC's end. Like Green Arrow had its kind of like resurgence with Arrow, but with Arrow coming to a close, like I think he's falling again from popularity,
Yeah.
whereas Hawkeye's still in that peak, right? Like
Okay, yeah. So like getting back to the main subject here. Like there is debate. You can go back and forth. In that case, would you maybe use like, okay, for certain characters that have an equivalent on both sides, would it not be cool to just say, okay, you have your Archer character, but then you could then just say choose a skin. You could have a Hawkeye skin, or you could have a Green Arrow skin. Or for your, like for instance, like a Gadget character, you could have Batman, or you could have Daredevil. Just say that could
Oh.
be.
I like that concept. When Matteo said that, like the marketing, I like that concept. But I was looking through like the core Marvel characters and the core DC characters, and unfortunately, unless you really want to sacrifice, like and take out core characters on either side, there's never going to be a clear cut matchup.
Yeah.
Like Daredevil and Batman is a massive stretch, and even that, like Daredevil most likely shouldn't be there, right? But you're never going to find somebody who opposes Deadpool. Maybe Harley Quinn, fine, but like who opposes Wolverine? Who opposes Black Panther? Who opposes Flash on Marvel's side? Who opposes like Cyborg on, well, I guess Iron Man, but like Wonder Woman, I guess Captain Marvel, but they're also like you
No.
can make stretches. For sure.
Shazam is taking on Captain Marvel, and he's just friggin' Shazam. Like,
No, Shazam's taking on Thor.
no,
He ain't touching
Shazam
Captain Marvel.
needs to
Captain
reclaim
Marvel
his name
versus
as
Captain Marvel back. Yeah, Shazam
No,
needs to take the
but
title.
realistically,
Of Captain Marvel
Captain Marvel would go up
Yeah.
against either Superman or Green Lantern.
back. Yeah, Space
Like,
Cop
realistically.
versus Space Cop.
And then who does Spider-Man go up against?
That's true.
Who does Aquaman go up against?
Arm
Namor the
fall off lad.
Submariner. But Namor might have Aquaman beat because Namor's got wings on his ankles.
Yep. That is true. Wait,
But,
Namor I think was like one of the only cases where like Marvel had the character like that idea first, I think. But
yes.
anyway, back to this. I still think it's like it's fun to speculate. It really, really is. I still think that we are going to get an Injustice story because I think it would be really, really cool because like, okay, where's the state of Injustice at in their own universe world, right? Like a lot of the heroes are dead. You could use the Marvel heroes as a way to like reinvigorate the hero side of things because like a lot of those characters are dead, but at the same time, Matteo, you're also the type of like DC fan that says, "Man, I wish you could still play as Nightwing in Injustice 2 even though he's dead," or "I want to be able to play as this character even though they're dead. Why can't I play as Sinestro? Why can't I do this?" Like I should be able to. The movesets are there. Yes, they want to keep things tied to the comic books, but they really don't need to. Like for the campaign, you can definitely just avoid those quote dead characters and play through the campaign of that game with the characters that are alive. And I'm pretty sure people aren't playing fighting games for the competitive story mode, right?
Definitely not.
Yeah.
But
So
the story mode is what brings the casual audience into the game.
yeah.
Into the
And if they understand that these characters are dead, right? Like you just say, okay, like they just don't appear in the campaign, or they mention in passing, oh yeah, uh sure wish Hal was here or something like that, right? Like then like the casual fan is not stupid. Like if you tell them the reason why a certain character doesn't appear in the game, they're going to understand, right?
Yes, but
And the
then
character's
Gino,
still in the game.
wouldn't you want in a fighting game, a versus Marvel fighting game, wouldn't you want best against Marvel's best? Their most iconic heroes against their most iconic heroes. Their most iconic villains against Marvel's most iconic villains. Like I wouldn't want Firestorm and Blue Beetle. Oh, well, actually, I wouldn't want
Yeah, you would. You
Firestorm
would.
and like Doctor Fate is great, but Doctor Fate's not like a top 10, top 12 DC hero. Same thing with like Swamp Thing I or I want like characters I want for Injustice, like just say Plastic Man and Etrigan the D. They're not worthy to be fighting against Marvel's top heroes. That you need Batman, you need Superman, you need which are going to be in the game, but like you need Nightwing, you need Shazam, you need Martian Manhunter.
Yeah, those characters can
Like,
still be there.
but then why bother with the Injustice continuity? Just make it like Mortal Kombat versus that game was garbage, but at least it had the best heroes against Mortal Kombat's biggest character. So,
Yeah.
but so Jules, I completely agree with your 12 uh Marvel character list. Like aside from Hawkeye, but like big deal. But what about villains wise? Like you said Doctor Doom and like Doctor Doom and Thanos if they only do what was it 14 characters on each side?
Yeah, so I think if we're going with high 20s, and like I do think if they were to market it as Marvel versus DC, they could get away with it just being mainly heroes because like that's what people want to see, right? They want to see the superheroes go up against each other, not necessarily the supervillains. And then you just have a few noteworthy villains who are behind the whole thing that are on there. So the only reason I even put my idea was there would only be one, which would be Thanos and Darkseid. But the only reason I put Doctor Doom on there too is because um there's no way
Fantastic
in hell
Four,
Joker.
right?
There's just no way in hell Joker's not going to be on DC's roster. And so if they're going to have two, then Marvel has to have two, and Doctor Doom is going to be
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And Doctor
I
Doom
would
also
really
is a
like
good
to
choice because it represents Fantastic Four as well.
Yeah,
Like
although
like
Doctor Doom has surpassed Fantastic Four at this point.
yeah, Doom is
well,
more of like an overarching Marvel villain. But like I have a crazy idea. What if it's like Loki and just say like Mr. and Mrs. Pitslick? they like team up and like two mischievous characters just be like, let's see
All
what
I can
happens when we
say-
do this.
All I can say is if
Troll.
the only two villains playable in a Marvel vs. DC fighter game were Loki and Mr. Mxyzptlk, I think people would be fucking joke.
Yep.
I think it would be pretty funny, but like that's just me. Like,
if-
I know I'm just being a troll.
No, that's fair. But if there were more villains than just that, I think that some safe bets for villains on either side, like from DC, like you'd probably have like Joker.
But we have
and
to
Harley.
go through the DC roster first. Like we haven't even talked about.
Okay, so I won't talk about DC
Let's
yet.
just
But,
go with Marvel villains.
Sure, but I think like the safe Marvel ones that you can bet on are Thanos, Doctor Doom, probably Loki, is a good
Yeah.
bet. Venom is a good bet. Magneto is a good bet, and then maybe something representing Captain America, whether that be Winter Soldier or Red Skull. I could see like something like that because I don't really know who else. Like you could have Phoenix, but there's also Phoenix.
There's a lot
That's
of
a lot.
baggage with that.
There's a lot of superpowers there, and
You could do
Balance.
Taskmaster.
and there's already a lot of X-Men. Taskmaster could be cool as well.
From a moveset standpoint would be cool, but like I don't know.
Yeah.
Not big enough, I don't think. But
He is fairly big. Like if you actually look at like the core Marvel villains that can work, like absolutely he would work. Like I think he's up there because a lot of these games draw not only on what's popular in the movies but also what's popular in the comics. And
you gotta get Galactus, and then the Anti-Monitor
no.
on each side.
Yeah, that would
Please
be really cool if they
don't-
have like that would be cool.
Please don't give me the repeat of I think is it which one is it? I think it's Marvel Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom where you can play as Galactus in like a bonus mode where he's like super big and you just control him. It's so stupid. It's so dumb.
So he was a playable character in one of the games too, wasn't he?
No, he was never like full on playable. He was like
Oh,
almost like bonus kind of thing. He's too big to be playable. How do you
Like,
do that?
beat up the car and
if
Street
Ridley
Fighter,
could
that
be
kind
in
of thing.
Smash Bros, they could put Galactus in a fighting game. Okay.
The
Yeah, and
only thing
Jules, think about
intimidating
it,
about
also, like,
Galactus is
Dark-
his size.
Yeah.
You take
Well,
that,
think about
he's
it,
just
Dark-
literally a guy in a helmet.
Well, think about it like this also. Like Darkseid, what we see as Darkseid is not actually his true form. He's the guy like dude is like universe big. Like
That's
he is
fine,
he's
but
massive.
he at least looks intimidating
Yeah.
when he's human size. What would Galactus look? He'd literally look like he'd literally look like none of you will understand this reference, only we will, but he'd literally look like Jamie in a helmet.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
well.
Yeah.
Anyways,
As
let's
long-
shift
as-
gears.
Yeah. If Magneto's in the
DC
game, he
now.
has to say welcome to die.
Welcome to die. Yeah.
So
So
for
I think
DC,
yeah, talk about DC.
the
Yeah,
characters I think that would be a lock in a Marvel vs. DC game are Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Flash, a Green Lantern, probably Hal, Aquaman, and probably at this point Cyborg. At least for the heroes.
I think
Yeah.
Supergirl's
And maybe
a lock,
Shazam
too,
and
to be
Shazam.
honest. I think Supergirl's a
Supergirl.
lock.
Yeah.
No,
and
hey,
then
we're missing the lock. The lock. The one that's above Superman and Wonder Woman and Batman. Harley Quinn.
Oh yeah, Harley's
Well-
in this game.
well, that's the thing. I don't like it when people classify like Catwoman and Harley Quinn and stuff as heroes because like
They're
No,
anti-heroes.
fair.
they're-
Okay, she wouldn't count as a
like-
hero, yeah.
but like it's
Catwoman,
not
I
like
think,
Deadpool. It's
should
not like
classify.
Deadpool. Like Deadpool and Harley Quinn are very similar
That
types of
banter
characters.
would be hilarious.
But
Okay, fair. I agree with you, but I think Catwoman at this point is hero. Like I wouldn't count her as villain anymore.
like anyways, so Supergirl I have as like probably because like my picks for the remaining characters in the DC universe are fan favorites and also characters that are going to be relevant because of upcoming movies. And that's why I think Shazam is a lock. That's why I think Blue Beetle's probably going to be in it because he's got a movie coming up as well. Supergirl, because Supergirl's going to be in the Flash movie and they're going to want to push her. Nightwing is like one of the biggest heroes in DC, just period. Like,
Oh
he's
my
a
gosh,
big fan.
please
Big.
stop.
He is. He
He's
is
a fan
legitimately.
favorite, sure.
He is a fan favorite character. Like, and then for me, the last character on my list I put was Martian Manhunter, because like Martian Manhunter is a founding member of the Justice League.
But he's not big enough.
really
He didn't even make the second Injustice game.
well, because you know why? It's because Martian Manhunter died in the Injustice 1 comic, so that's why he wasn't in Injustice
Such
2.
a stupid reason.
So
But I
he was
so
the biggest
I also
character.
think
He was, but like, just quickly, like Martian Manhunter was the most requested character for Injustice 1.
I
So,
know.
and then like there's
Another
other
character
characters
to
though.
consider,
Yeah,
like
go ahead.
Zatanna,
Yep.
also has a movie coming, and she would add a mystic element, right? Because there isn't any magic users on. I know you say Shazam's a magic user, but the way he uses his magic is very like elemental. It's like Thor. It's not like casting in the sense of like Doctor Strange, which is a very different type of magic representation. And I feel like we need like somebody from the mystic side of DC in the roster, and Zatanna just
Fate,
makes the
Doctor
most sense.
Fate would be really cool too.
I
I
know
know, but,
Doctor Fate
like,
would be cool. but
Constantine's
Etrigan's the
getting-
demon. Yeah,
Constant
I know.
too.
Yeah.
Because like Constantine's
Yeah,
getting
Constantine
his
would
own
be a good
show
choice.
as well.
Yeah.
Because
yeah.
J.J. Abrams is developing a Justice League Dark universe for D on HBO Max's show, and
Well, there's gonna be a lot of lens flares.
but yeah, and like other like Black Canary, because like Black Canary's movies popular. She was a highly requested character for Injustice 2. Green Arrow should be in a top 12 characters, but once again, like, I would put him in, but I don't know, like others probably wouldn't if Hawkeye's there. But like, and like the other thing is like so actually I want to talk about DC villains, and then this is something I want to add. Will affect Marvel as well, but like Joker and Darkseid are probably the biggest two, but like Lex Luthor, very important villain, and like Darkseid, yes, is the universal threat. Joker is the most popular, like, period, but Lex Luthor is one of the most intimidating villains in the universe, just because like he's so smart and friggin' rich, and he's got a vendetta against Superman, and he will do everything in his power to take Superman out, and so super menacing, and like
Isn't Lex
Jesse
Luthor just essentially
Eisenberg,
like
Jesse Eisenberg, Lex Luthor aside, you got to watch Lex Luthor in like the animated Justice shows and other animated
and like yeah,
in the comics and stuff. Like he does, like, he is just it's super iconic villain. So like, and then like Black Adam, like Black Adam's not big now, but wait till the movie comes out with The Rock. Like, you're gonna see Black Adam everywhere. Like he's gonna be like the big, like he's gonna be the best thing since sliced bread for D. Like he's gonna be everywhere. He's gonna be in the comics. He's on the friggin' Justice League right now, actually, in the comic.
wait, what?
Yeah, Black Adam's on the Justice League, the current run.
Okay, dictators are approved.
And like Harley Quinn will probably find her way, regardless of what we say. Like it'll probably happen. And then like Sinestro, I wouldn't put Sinestro and Green Lantern in the game because like their abilities are very similar. I get what Sinestro's powered by fear, Green is powered by will, but like, it's the Hawkeye Green Arrow argument again. But like Deathstroke also, imagine the promotional material: Taskmaster versus Deathstroke, them fighting each other. I think that would be
like,
really cool.
It's cool. It's cool from a promotional standpoint, but it's not cool from the standpoint of like these characters functionally are the same.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
but the other thing I wanted to talk about is like if the roster like the roster cap is low, one way they could work that or work around that is the idea of premier skins.
Yep.
Like with like Injustice 2, you have like Jay Garrick and Reverse Flash would have basically the same moveset as the Flash, just they got a new voice actor and like a character overlay and just put it over top of the Flash. So
yeah, of course, and that could definitely be a way to improve it. I feel like we're starting to actually repeat a lot of the same things we probably said in the last time we talked about Injustice. Now, so trying to think of if there's anything more about just this Marvel concept we can talk about. I was thinking we could talk what would a strictly Marvel roster look like if it's just a Marvel game, not a Marvel versus DC game. But for the sake of time, I wonder if that's something we should save for another episode. Because just for the sake of time, you know?
Like we mentioned almost like 20 characters from Marvel and DC, right? But like for Marvel roster, those 20 characters we mentioned will probably be on that roster.
Well, that's the
really,
thing.
like,
So
it's like a matter of adding like 8.
well, if we're looking at the first Injustice as a framework, the first Injustice game had 24 characters. 12 were heroes, 12 were villains. So if we're going to use that as a framework and say strictly Marvel fighting game, we've already identified our 12 heroes, and we've identified, if we include Taskmaster, 6 villains. So it would just be a matter of who are the other 6, right? And just identifying that. So right now, just reminders of if we're looking at it as just a Marvel fighting game with the assumption that it's going to be the exact same allocations as the first Injustice game, so 12 heroes, 12 villains. The current characters we've said are the 12 heroes would be Captain America, Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, Spider-Man, Captain Marvel, Doctor Strange, Wolverine, Black Panther, Black Widow, Deadpool, and probably Hawkeye. And then we've said that villain side, you'd see Thanos, Magneto, Doctor Doom, Venom, Loki, and somebody from Captain America, whether that be Winter Soldier or Red Skull, and then maybe Taskmaster. So that's 7. So we'd actually need 5 more. Yep, I said Thanos. Right? So that would be 7.
Yeah, you probably have another Spider-Man, probably.
Who would that be? Who would you guys think?
Goblin.
You think Goblin?
Goblin would be cool.
Yeah, I'd probably say Goblin. Sure.
We said Fantastic Four, right? Some of the Fantastic Four.
No, we didn't actually include them.
I wouldn't,
because
them at this point.
I wouldn't. Compared to these, who would you take out?
I think you would need Reed Richards because, like, just saying like a story situation, he is basically like God smart.
Well, they could show up, I'm sure, in the story, but I don't know if they're only going to pick 12 heroes. Who do you remove for Reed? Because you're not removing most of these. You're not removing one of the core Avengers. You're not removing Spider-Man or Captain Marvel or Doctor Strange or Wolverine.
Well, I thought we had to add. I thought we had to add 5 more.
5 more villains.
Oh, strictly villains.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Ultron could work.
Ultron would be cool. Dormammu, so you can come to bargain.
Yeah, Dormammu actually could work because he's been in what's it called, in Marvel vs. Capcom quite a few times.
Yeah, and like just going down the Doctor Strange rabbit hole as well. You could have Mordo.
You could
evil magic guy.
Well, Doctor Doom is evil magic guy as well. Remember that.
About like MODOK would be MODOK would be hilarious.
MODOK would be really
MODOK.
funny.
How about like
Kingpin.
yeah, actually that's one thing. I know what our roster lacks. Like hulking big characters like there was in Injustice 1.
Hey, how about we put Bullseye? We don't need Daredevil, but give us Bullseye or Elektra.
Yeah, and is Elektra a villain?
She's
Catwoman.
like Catwoman. She's like Catwoman.
Yeah.
You could throw her on either side.
Yeah.
Even like
What Juggernaut?
Oh, that would be cool.
Juggernaut would be cool. Because like that's another one of the big characters put like actually like big characters. But
Or you could do. Oh no, who'd be cool on villain side? He's not really villain, but you could put him there if you wanted. Silver Surfer.
I don't know. I personally
I always
wouldn't
found
put
Silver
him.
Surfer kind of lame. No offense.
But even like I know another Spider-Man villain, but like Doc Ock would be cool.
That would be really
cool.
That would be really unique actually, because like what other character would have the extra arms and stuff to like contend with anywhere else really?
But like that's.
But
the thing.
what about Lucia von Bardas?
The hell is that?
She's the villain from Marvel Ultimate Alliance 2, also from the comics.
What about Aldrich Killian?
No.
Yeah, what about Mandarin?
Which one? Like the one that we were promised, the one that we ended up getting, or the one that's going to be like the new interpretation of the character?
Shang-Chi.
The Shang-Chi.
Either way, I don't think we're ever gonna be able to come up with who these last two will be.
No offense,
But
Marvel fans.
This is where we really needed Yako, because I think this would have been like
yeah,
the
we
best
definitely needed Yako.
But he would just recommend the villains that were in Marvel vs. Capcom. The Marvel vs. Capcom
it's true because he's also a big fighting game guy.
Well, that's why.
But either way, I do think we've exhausted this topic
just a little bit. Yeah.
So I do think we can probably wrap it up. Like we said, we don't necessarily think this is happening, but we thought it would be fun to talk about.
It was fun. I had a good time. And hey, and if there's more rumors and stuff, we could cover it. We will cover those rumors when they come out.
There's gonna be a lot of rumors coming out now. Like E3 is like a little over a month away, and this is when all the taps,
all the juicy morsels.
Yeah. So for those of you listening at home, or wherever you're listening to, just to give you a sneak peek, we have a few things probably coming up on our slate. We have the next episode of our Essentials kind of mini series will be coming out sometime in the future. We're also thinking about like new Pokemon Snap is coming out, so we're thinking about talking potentially about that and maybe some other Pokemon games in the future as we move into that. And then there's a lot of games coming out on the horizon that I'm sure we may discuss. Mass Effect, further down the line, Ratchet and Clank, and Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade, and so there's going to be stuff.
Not to mention all of the E3 hype and speculation.
We're still thinking about how we're gonna approach E3 this year.
Yeah, we got to structure that.
So
we're gonna definitely be talking about E3. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about.
Either way, once again, happy birthday to Matteo, and thank you all for tuning in today. Remember to give us a like. If you liked our speculation or hear something specific, shoot us a comment. And just remember, subscribe unless you're a Gino fan. And unless you are a Gotham fan, we don't want you.
Yeah.
I prefer Gotham fans over Gino fans because at least Gotham is DC. Gino's just garbage.
No
Yeah.
offense, Gino.
And then just
True.
before we sign off here, we all can 100% agree there's no chance Gino will be in this fighting game.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or any
Good night,
other.
everyone.
Yeah. Good
Yeah.
night.
Good night, everyone.
See ya.